This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thanks for letting me do this for so long. Hey, do you remember when I made videos that, weren't just rankings? Don't tell anybody, but the rankings are effectively the same as the top 5s, just rebranded and larger, I suppose. So it should be no great change, but I do like getting back to what I know. And hey, this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a long time, so if there's one thing to distract me from Zelda, it'll be digging down on some amazing hidden details. I realize that term, hidden details, it opens the door for potentially talking about secret references and Easter eggs, but I especially have a special love for games that take a bit more time to be that tad bit more realistic. They're usually not instances that are significant enough in their games to spend time on, but whenever you find a cool little detail, it's like a foolproof way of putting a smile on your face. It's something incredibly missable, but that just gives it a lot more value in my eyes. I'll validate someone's obsessive work, just watch me! Skyrim has to be one of the most well-documented games in recent memory. I mean, it's been out for 12 years and re-released on newer platforms for most of those years, but I feel like there's been so many articles and videos made in that time about every tiny nook and cranny of this game. I've read and watched a fair heaping of those, and even I was surprised to find out that there's ants in Skyrim. Yeah, you spend most of your time looking at crabs or wolves or trolls, but the most fascinating and yet most avoidable part of the ecosystem has been scuttling around underneath your feet the entire time. I don't know about you, but I didn't even think to look for them. How many games have you played where you can realistically expect to see ants on the ground? Not a lot, that's for sure. Ants can't be killed or collected, so they're just a part of the set dressing for the most part, but they are coded to only appear in certain places. It's not much of a critical design decision that must be done, otherwise the fundamental makeup of Skyrim will disintegrate into a fine powder, but it's some absolutely stonking world building by Bethesda. They seem to be behaving like real ants. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but they're moving from one area to another in this long, super organized line, and they are mostly found crawling over logs and dead wood in the warmer areas of Skyrim. It's obviously not designed to be something that most people will notice, and I know this for a fact because I remember Hod Toward giving an interview after release about how they're really proud of these stupid ants because 99% of people won't even know that they're there. Well, he's not wrong, but I sure did notice a ton of other bugs in this game. They weren't so well hidden. I think Mario has endured so well over the years because he's just so goddamn charming. He's Nintendo's equivalent of Mickey Mouse. He's probably more recognizable across the world than the company he belongs to, and a big part of that is his infectious personality that helps give his video games a ton of character and keep people coming back every time. The underrated heavyweight of giving Mario a lot to work with are his idle animations, which in the 3D games is basically a task of watching Mario getting exhausted and falling asleep pretty much instantaneously. I do admire his ability to fall asleep quite literally anywhere, and to do so with very little delay at all. My guy takes some serious power naps. I want to focus on Super Mario Odyssey though, because Mario falling asleep isn't so much a crazy eye for detail as it is a byproduct of needing an idle animation without doing anything too ridiculous. When the deets come roaring in is when you listen to what he's mumbling in his sleep. Like most Italians, I'm sure Mario always has the same pasta dream when he sleeps, and the mad lads at Nintendo decided to list off more than 30 different types of pasta, including some really niche regional variants that I personally have never heard of. Like, we've all heard of spaghetti and lasagna, but what the hell is barbine or ziti? They sound like alien species. What are you doing, Italy? For the record, he also mumbles Peach's name and yummy for some reason, so it's not all pasta all the time, but I love the idea of Charles Martinet with decades of experience and, a complete understanding of how Mario talks, getting put to task to sleepily pronounce several dozen types of pasta for the idle animation. Mario talks more in his sleep than when he's awake. That's food for thought, or, pasta for thought. It's worth mentioning that the kingdom he falls asleep in will change the species of bird that eventually lands on his nose, with some of the standouts being the sparrow wearing a top hat in the Cap Kingdom, the flying penguin in Snow Kingdom, and the complete lack of bird in Moon Kingdom because, you know, no oxygen. Although, apparently, there is a 1 in 512 chance that a UFO will land on Mario's nose instead across all the kingdoms. Our intrepid hero, friend to animal and alien alike, still asleep on the job though. He's the best we got, we can't complain. Hey guys, real quick, my channel has been approved for YouTube memberships now, so if you fancy supporting my channel more directly, you can become a member for as little as £1 a month and gain access to some nifty perks, as well as being featured on my channel page. Hit the join button below this video if that sounds cool to you. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. At times, it feels like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a technical flex by the dev team masquerading as a video game. Like, this game took a while to be made for a lot of reasons, and clearly one of those was just how much time and effort was poured into making this game both as realistic as humanly possible, and also as the next-gen game that everyone else can aspire to replicate. Every inch of Red Dead Redemption 2 is blanketed with insane details that no game should reasonably be spending time on, but I am always on the lookout for tiny features that help with the world building. I'm a little sad like that, what can I say? A lot of games these days will talk about how their NPCs have their own daily schedules that they'll be in the middle of while you're out questing, and not as many will actually be able to follow through on that promise. RDR2 is extra enough to go so much further than that, and I'll tell you, the moment I saw people working on laying down railway tracks, I kinda knew where this was going. Structures are built in real time in this game, which isn't too wild since I can imagine that as a possibility in my brain, but seeing each individual step in real time is honestly a little mind-blowing. You can watch each railway worker hammer away and gradually move along the track to do more, but it's more than that, because if you look closer, you can see each worker hammer in the nail bolt thing and only moving on when it's fully hammered in. Rockstar 100% didn't need to do this. They could have had some looping animation of half a dozen workers getting to work on some track, and no one would have batted an eye. As it is, I feel very guilty that I played Red Dead Redemption 2 and beat the whole game, and yet didn't know how detailed this animation was. Whoever's idea this was, I sincerely hope that their efforts are noticed by more people, because this is the sort of ridiculous focus that I love to see. GTA 6 is going to have a lot of this, isn't it? Here's a fun fact for you, I've had most of this video written for about a month. I was going to make this video shortly after Zelda month, but my Tears of the Kingdom videos start to do incredibly well, so I just kept doing that for a while instead. It means that I know an awful lot about this game and how it tickles that special part of your brain. If you're in the market for tiny details that make you smile, this and Breath of the Wild will develop with such an obsessive eye for detail that we could fill half a dozen of these by just going over everything that makes a modern Zelda tick. But for now, I want to highlight just the one small feature from Tears of the Kingdom that blew my mind to pieces very recently. Because I'm an idiot who doesn't learn, I chose to head towards the Gerudos first out of all four corners of Hyrule, which comes with a lot of challenges given that electricity is a hard element to counter, and the variable weather of the desert means that it's either too hot or too cold at any one time. I know Tears of the Kingdom gives you the freedom to make this terrible choice, but it feels like it's softly designed to be the last place you visit, having filled the top left with hearts and having filled your brain with how to play this game. However, this hostile environment was the perfect place to discover my new favourite little detail in Tears of the Kingdom, because the sun only becomes overwhelming in this region to the point of damaging you when it's approaching midday, when the sun is at its highest, much like it would do in real life, I suppose. Early morning and late afternoon you won't take weather damage from the heat because it's not quite hot enough to do this. And to be fair, I think this bit is carried over from Breath of the Wild. What isn't, I think, is how shadows factor into all of this, because you can be in the middle of the desert at lunchtime with the sun at its skin-meltingly hottest, and yet finding some shade will be enough to move that temperature needle just that little bit so that it doesn't damage you. Yes, you can easily wear the right clothing or eat the right heat-resistant food, but I love that Tears of the Kingdom is realistic enough to recognize that shadows can provide a bit of relief from the heat. You can cross the desert in blinding sunshine completely naked, but as long as you bring an umbrella, you've got nothing to worry about. Just make sure you don't cross at night because, you know, shadows don't really help with that. Good luck finding any. If you held me up at gunpoint and demanded that I talk about a series of games that have a bunch of cool details in them, I'd probably start by calmly asking you to not shoot me, and then I'd either call the police or give you the number of my therapist, and then from either the prison visit or the waiting room of the therapist's office, I would tell you that Metal Gear was always the answer to that question and we didn't need to resort to violence. I'm convinced at this point that Hideo Kojima is physically incapable of making games normally and can only make his social commentaries when they're completely rammed with special little details that have you thinking a little hard about solutions to problems. Metal Gear has been doing this for basically its entire run, and it'll be interesting and very likely depressing to see if this is retained when that Delta remake of MGS3 comes out. Of all the games to remake without Kojima's influence, Jesus Christ. It's a good segue though, because Snake Eater has some astonishing attention to detail. It kinda has to, since it's mostly set in these massive Russian rainforests full of animals going about their day with blissful ignorance, up until the point where they end up in Snake's sweaty mouth.
Tasty.
The survival aspect of MGS3 has always been one of the highlights of this game, and when it's not making standard gameplay a lot more fun, it's a pretty important part of one of the best boss fights ever made for any game, basically ever. The end works on completely different rules, with the boss arena being this huge open forest as you fight this old man sniper, who you can beat in a number of different ways, but most methods require a learned approach to your environment and how you can move through it while staying as hidden as possible. If you fight him like a normal boss, he'll embarrass you, but if you show him respect and buy into the concept of the boss fight, you can beat him fairly easily. However, many of you will be very aware that there are alternative ways of beating the end, because he is over 100 years old, and his weakness is time. We all know that you can either take 2 real-life weeks to beat him, or just change your console's clock, and Mr. End will die of old age, which is a unique relationship for a boss to have with real-life time. Imagine if you wait for 2 weeks for Bowser to just, decide to not be a villain anymore. The extra little detail that often gets overlooked with this fight is that if you save in battle and go away to enjoy your life for 2 days, Snake will fall asleep and be taken prisoner by the end, which I adore because it shows that time can be a problem for both sides in this fight. It's not the best spectator sport when one side can fall asleep and lose and the other can get too old and die. Time makes fools of us all, I suppose. And that's all the details I've got for you for now. Do you agree, or is there something else you'd have a number one? Let me know in a comment down below, and make sure to leave a like and hit subscribe for more if you enjoyed the video, and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. If you need something else to watch now, I ranked all the memories from Tears of the Kingdom last week, and I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Scott Riker, Sarah Mallion, and the Green Scorpion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.